and one day Mrs. Bird had taken him along to the bank in order to open an account. For several days afterwards, Paddington had hung about in a shop doorway opposite, casting suspicious glances at anyone who went in or out. But after having been moved on by a passing policeman, he'd had to let matters rest. Since then, although he had carefully checked the amount in his book several times, Paddington had never actually been inside the bank. Secretly, he was rather overawed by all the marble and thick polished wood, so he was pleased when at long last 10 o'clock began to strike on a nearby church clock, and he was still the only one outside. As the last of the chimes died away, there came the sound of bolts being withdrawn on the other side of the door, and Paddington hurried forward to peer eagerly through the letterbox. "Here, here!" exclaimed the porter as he caught sight of Paddington's hat through the slit. "No hawkers here, young fellow, my lad. This is a bank, not a workhouse. We don't want no hobbledehoys hanging round here." "Hobbledehoys?" repeated Paddington, letting go of the letterbox in his surprise. "That's what I said," grumbled the porter as he opened the door. "Breathing all over me knockers. I has to polish that brass, you know." "I'm not a hobbledehoy," exclaimed Paddington, looking most offended as he waved his bank book in the air. "I'm a bear, and I've come to see Mr. Floyd about my savings." "Oh, dear," said the porter, taking a closer look at Paddington. "Begging your pardon, sir. When I saw your whiskers poking through me letterbox, I mistook you for one of them bearded gentlemen of the road." "That's all right," said Paddington sadly. "I often get mistaken." And as the man held the door open for him, he raised his hat politely and hurried into the bank. On several occasions in the past, Mrs. Bird had impressed on Paddington how wise it was to have money in the bank in case of a rainy day, and how he might be glad of it one day for a special occasion. Thinking things over in bed the night before, Paddington had decided that going abroad for a holiday was very much a special occasion, and after studying the advertisement once again, he had thought up a very good idea for having the best of both worlds. Like many ideas he had at night under the bedclothes, though, it didn't seem quite such a good one in the cold light of day. Now that he was actually inside the bank, Paddington began to feel rather guilty, and he wished he'd consulted Mr. Gruber on the matter, for he wasn't at all sure that Mrs. Bird would approve of his taking any money out without first asking her. Hurrying across to one of the cubbyholes in the counter, Paddington climbed up on his suitcase and peered over the edge. The man on the other side looked rather startled when Paddington's hat appeared over the top, and he reached nervously for a nearby alarm bell. "I'd like to take out all my savings for a special occasion, please," said Paddington importantly as he handed the man his book. Looking rather relieved, the man took Paddington's book from him and then raised one eyebrow as he held it up to the light. There were a number of calculations in red ink all over the cover, not to mention blots and one or two rather messy-looking marmalade stains. "I'm afraid I had an accident with one of my jars under the bedclothes last night," explained Paddington hastily as he caught the man's eye. "One of your jars?" repeated the man. "Under the bedclothes?" "That's right," said Paddington. "I was working out my interest, and I stepped back into it by mistake. It's a bit difficult under the bedclothes." "It must be," said the man distastefully. "Marmalade stains, indeed, and on a Floyd's bank book." He hadn't been with the branch for very long, and although the manager had told him they sometimes had some very odd customers to deal with, nothing had been mentioned about Bear's banking accounts. "What would you like me to do with it?" he asked doubtfully. "I'd like to leave all my interest in, please," explained Paddington, "in case it rains." "Well," said the man in a superior tone of voice as he made some calculations on a piece of paper, "I'm afraid you won't keep very dry on this. It only comes to 10 pence. "What?" exclaimed Paddington, hardly able to believe his ears. 10 pence? I don't think that's very interesting." "Interest isn't the same thing as interesting," said the man. "Not the same thing at all." He tried hard to think of some way of explaining matters, for he wasn't used to dealing with bears, and he had a feeling that Paddington was going to be one of his more difficult customers. It's something we give you for letting us borrow..."